So my name is Danny Rubin. Good morning or good afternoon. Those of you I've seen before, those of you who are new, great to have you here. I'm the founder of our company, which is Rubin, and we provide an online curriculum for business communication skills, teaching students how to write and speak to open doors for new opportunities. And I'm thrilled you're here today for our next installment in our career conversation series, talking with Dr. Ruth Jones Nichols about running and nonprofit, running a food bank during a pandemic, heading into the holiday season. What an important job. We're going to learn about the role she has and the challenges and opportunities she's faced with now through the end of the year and beyond. Before we dive into that, I always want to start off with free resources for educators, which I will mention again at the end. But let me open up my chat and share my screen. Can everybody see my screen okay? Can someone give me a yes in the chat? You can see my screen? Okay. See some hands up? Okay, great. So for the teachers, if you don't have these resources yet, if you're new here, you don't have them yet, let me mention it right out of the gate, okay? We have put together a guide of writing and speaking examples for helping students engage with employers virtually, showing them how to email and request a Q&A with a professional, how to prepare for that Q&A or a virtual tour of a business, how to hold that Q&A with a professional like we're going to do today, how to even write a thank you email afterwards, and then writing about these virtual experiences on a resume or cover letter. Put together a packet that's free for any interested educator who doesn't have it yet. As well, we put together this email etiquette unit. If you don't have this yet, we always like to offer it because it's just a great guide and primer for students who need help with their email correspondence. Take a look at the topics here. Raise your hand, teachers, if your students can work on their email etiquette. If too many emails look like text messages, sorry students, I know you're here listening too, but this is just where we are in the world. And we want to help you to write better so people will want to write you back for jobs and scholarships and college opportunities. So these two items are available for any interested educator who doesn't have it yet. All you have to do is, as we always do, please go to the chat, type the word interested and your email address, and we will pass it along. And the goal here, as much as possible, is to have a quick phone call with a new educator to our community, help you make sense of this content, understand the world that you are in, so we can help you make the most of it. So it's a quick phone call in the next few days. The resources are yours. We want to help you to teach students to be better communicators right now, because we are in the virtual learning era, and now is when these skills matter. So thank you to those who have requested it. I'll mention it again at the end. But this is for teachers, not students. They'll get it down to you. Okay, so students don't need to request this, just the teachers. Okay, so I appreciate those of you who put your name in the chat. I'll mention it again at the end, but it's yours to have. And we love giving out resources from our webinars. It's really what drives it. We want to put this in your hands as soon as possible. Now, and as you know, we always have another webinar around the corner, and we got another good one coming up in 2 weeks. We're changing career paths. We are going to talk to an engineer on Thursday, November 19th, going back to our original time of 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. We're talking to Phil Poland. He's a lead engineer in the city of Virginia Beach, city of nearly 500,000 people, major challenges, flooding challenges, rising seas. He's going to talk about how they're combating sea level rise with some innovative engineering technology. Raise your hand here if you're a teacher or student interested in showing students the world of engineering. So we're really going to go into learning about his job every day, real hands-on, working for a major city, doing engineering projects. So we'll send out the link to register for that tomorrow morning and then next week as well. And of course, we always give out certificates. If the student and the teacher for attending today live, or if you share students with the recording, you're all going to get a certificate for showing that you were here today, for your binder, for your wall of achievement, whatever you've got, okay? Lastly, before we get to our webinar session, something that I've neglected to do all along the way, if you're on Twitter, student or teacher, we'd love to have you join us on our Twitter handle @Rubin Education. Give us a follow, stay up with us on Twitter, updated with events, announcements, resources. love to have you on Twitter if that's where you are, at Rubin Education. You can follow us and be part of us on Twitter. Okay, now let me turn off my share and go back to share my screen and go back to my homepage. Okay, so get my chat back open again. Hold on. There it is. Okay, so we're going to be learning from Dr. Jones Nichols today and a bit at the end out of our company's curriculum, which is called Emerge. Some of you use it. Some of you have heard me talk about it before. For those teachers who are new, give you the 30-second overview so you understand where our instruction comes from. Emerge is an online curriculum teaching students writing and speaking skills. Let me put the Twitter handle Brooke just asked. Rubin Education is our Twitter handle. Okay, so we teach writing and speaking for employability skills, entrepreneurship skills, and leadership skills. And we cover skills like how to write an email, life skills like meeting new people, phone and video etiquette, like leaving a voicemail on someone's phone, networking emails, resumes, cover letters, internship and job outreach emails, LinkedIn profile creation, job interview preparation. Anybody here teach marketing, entrepreneurship, business? Raise your hand if you teach those topics, or if you can tell me in the chat as well. We teach writing skills and speaking for business, sales writing, website page writing, public relations, writing skills for fundraising, and leadership communication, writing and speaking as a manager, writing to clients, writing for project management, public speaking, writing reports and summaries, and activities for student leaders. I always like to ask, are any advisors here for student organizations, CTSOs? Anybody here an advisor for CTSO like DECA or FBLA or Skills USA? Who's here? Tell me in the chat, who we got? We always have some advisors here. Keep losing my little chat. So love to, BPA, excuse me, I always forget to say BPA, DECA, okay, great. So lots and lots of resources. We're gonna touch on a couple of those topics later today. Now remember, we'll bring in Dr. Jones Nichols in just a moment. Remember, on the worksheet, if you saw it, I asked you to visit the website for the Foodbank of Southeastern Virginia. And let's hop over there right now, okay? Now, let me go back to the homepage for a second. So, on their homepage, let's say that you visited their homepage, and I asked this question in the last webinars too, but for the new students, I really want to drive this home. If you wanted to learn, if you go to a company's homepage, you want to learn the latest and greatest that they're working with and their latest accomplishments. Somebody go in the chat, tell me, looking at the screen right now, what link would you click on to learn about their latest and greatest stuff? There you go. Michael says it. Antonio says it. We would go, let's see a few other folks. Ryan Carter, to the news page, right? Very good. Those of you who are here before, you've heard me talk about it. The new people, we go to the news page. We want to see what's latest and greatest about the company. And look, we've learned that Virginia Beach is distributing $10 million in pandemic relief to different nonprofits, one of which is the Foodbank of Southeastern Virginia. Okay, so we've learned, and that's something like if you were to go to a job interview or you're meeting with Dr. Jones Nichols yourself, you could bring up that you know this information before your conversation. And I would hope that would impress her, that you already did a little bit of research into what they're going through. Okay, now let's have Dr. Jones Nichols, I'll bring you back in now. Let's have you turn on your camera again. Hopefully you're still here. Yes, she's still here. And so now, okay, we're on your website, and I'm gonna start off the questions, okay? Before we do that, I'm gonna let you give your quick background, your bio, okay? And then I'll ask a first question, and as we're talking, for the students, I'm gonna turn this off, okay? I want the students to start going to the Q&A area and start posing your questions in the Q&A. And I'll go through and pick out some questions as we go. So feel free to start adding your questions to the Q&A along the bottom row. Dr. Jones Nichols, give us your background and how you ended up in the job you're in today.
Wow, that is such a long story, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. Thank you, Danny, and thank you to all of you for joining today and having an interest in learning more about the nonprofit sector. I have actually been working in the nonprofit sector now for about 25 years. I started out in a rural community right after I graduated from the College of William and Mary, and I can truly say I've had a lot of different positions in the helping profession. So I started out as a student assistance counselor. I then became a school social worker. I moved up and became a manager for a comprehensive housing organization. I've worked as well in the public education space, doing coordination of partners that provide a variety of services for vulnerable populations. And over the years, I have moved up and moved on, and this is my second executive position. So prior to this position, I actually was the executive director for the YWCA of Southampton Roads, and I'm just delighted really to be here. I've always been an advocate for women, children, as well as racial and ethnic minorities. But even more importantly, I've been an advocate for systems change, which is about making sure we improve the safety net for people who are struggling to make ends meet, as well as engage in change that will have a measurable impact. So I'm delighted to be with all of you today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, you do have a great background. You've worked in a variety of organizations. I have a question to get it started, and I'll go through some student questions too. And it's showing students what I want you to do in your own experiences. The article that I showed you that the food bank is receiving money to help distribute aid. In that article, it said that your donations are down by 1 million pounds of food. And that's what it said in that article. So my question to you is, outside of this grant relief program, what have you been doing to try and find food donations in other creative ways, since it's down so much since the pandemic?
Well, I have to tell you, that 1 million number is a misnomer because it's down 1 million pounds for the city of Virginia Beach alone.
Wow.
So that's not 1 million overall, it's just 1 million for one city. With that being said, we have been looking at a variety of sources for bringing in more healthy, nutritious food. The government represents one source for us. There are a number of food and nutrition programs that we can access to get more healthy food into our food bank and out into the community. We've also been working with a variety of partners throughout the community to make sure we can receive more donated food through food and fund drives. But then we've also been doing more fundraising to ensure that people give financially in order to expand our capacity to purchase food so that we can supplement what we receive through the government or through community donations. So we've been working pretty hard to pursue a number of different avenues to make sure we continue to have food to assist our neighbors in need.
Wow. And yeah, you're right. I mean, 1 million pounds in just Virginia Beach. And for everybody to understand, we're in a region here in Virginia where there are multiple cities, not just Virginia Beach, lots and lots of cities and people who need food. So that is a staggering number. We have a great question here from Tabitha, and I don't know what school she's from. She wants to comment in the chat and tell us, but Tabitha Wood, she says, what has been your biggest challenge with food distribution during the pandemic? Maybe she's asking, how are you giving out food right now in a safe way? Just how has your operation had to change? She's from Black Hills State University in South Dakota. So how has everything had to change and adjust in this new normal?
Right. Things have changed not only for our food bank, but for food banks across the country. Traditionally, we have distributed most of our food through feeding partners that operate food pantries, soup kitchens, and emergency shelters. But as you can imagine, a number of the soup kitchens and food pantries had to close early in the pandemic because they weren't quite able to continue serving safely and efficiently. So we had to literally overnight change our business model, because even though we're in the helping profession, we're still operating a business. So we had to change our business model overnight to more drive-through, no-touch distributions, where we would be able to serve a significant number of individuals in order to keep up with the needs. So that's one of the greatest ways that our model changed. The other way that our model changed, which represented a challenge for us, was more so on the food sourcing side. And the question came up previously about, how we're getting food at a time when we're seeing a decline in donations. And, just to put things in perspective, each year, most of the food we have distributed has been donated. And so, at the onset of the pandemic, most of those donations went away, again, literally almost overnight for our organization. So we had to purchase more food, which had a greater cost than the donated food. And even after we purchased that food, some of it took as long as 12 weeks for it to get here. And can you imagine us saying to someone who showed up for assistance, we can't serve you for 12 weeks? So that was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity for us to think about how we could be agile as an organization and really make sure we're always in a position to meet the needs through a variety of food sources and distribution models. So those are two key challenges that we experience on the distribution side and the food sourcing side.
Wow. I want to direct students to something we just listened to. Who can tell me, how many weeks did she say some of the food took to arrive? Who remembers hearing that number? Someone tell me in the chat what number you heard. Adam says it, Tabitha, 12, right? So let me help you understand. Let's say you're sitting in an interview with Dr. Jones Nichols. She's looking to hire a super executive assistant one day, right? She's looking to hire, and you're sitting across from her. And she says, sometimes it took up to 12 weeks. Now, what would be a good follow-up question to that? What would you be thinking? If she says it took sometimes 12 weeks for some food, what would your next question be in your mind? If you want to be curious about this topic, can someone take a guess in the chat? What might you say next? If she said it took 12 weeks, I would say, why did it take 12 weeks? Right? We want to push deeper. We want to learn more. We want to show we're very curious about this topic and we're interested in what goes on at the food bank. So the question is, why did it sometimes take 12 weeks? That's my question to Dr. Jones Nichols. And I'm trying to show the students, use our active listening skills to take a conversation deeper, to show a person we're interested. So answer that question for all of us. Why did it take that long for certain items to arrive?
Another great question. And so literally, we went from collaborating with the grocery store industry to receive their excess food in support of our mission programs to actually competing with the grocery store industry. So we were ordering food from the same places they were placing their orders, right? So we were competing with the major supermarkets and the Dollar Trees and the Family Dollars of the world. So it took longer for us to get food in, but we were able to continue serving.
Wow. Hey, students, teachers, raise your hand if you found that answer interesting, that she was having to compete and still is against grocery stores for the same food. Now, how did we get to that answer? How did we uncover that information? By listening closely and asking a follow-up question. And I want you to take that mentality into all of your career opportunities. Listen closely and be curious. If someone says something that's like, wow, 12 weeks, you'd say, why? And the answer is the most interesting part of the conversation, because that's really where the good stuff is to go below the surface. So again, we try to treat these webinars as learning opportunities as much as they are Q&As. We have a good question here from Mary Muckenfuss in Charlotte. Maybe it came from one of her students. I know she's a marketing business teacher in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. She said, how is it different promoting or seeking help for a nonprofit versus a for-profit business? Is it easier to obtain help? Is it harder? when you're competing against a grocery store, does anybody have any sympathy for you, or are you just out there with the big dogs and you just have to fend for yourself? How is it out there every day?
You know, I love these questions, and thank you for the marketing question in particular.
Yep.
In the for-profit sector, you're marketing a product. In the nonprofit sector, you're marketing a product. The key difference, though, is that in the for-profit sector, you get something that's tangible in return. So you get that product. But in the nonprofit sector, we're marketing a service that we're going to provide to other individuals. So as the person who is then going to support that service, right, you don't get anything in return except the gratification from knowing that you have helped other people who, in this case, were struggling to put food on their table. So, you know, we use some of the same tactics in terms of our marketing, but we have to make the case for support in slightly different ways, because at the end of the day, we're not able to give people who have invested in us the product. We're giving that to someone else. So we're both marketing a product, right? But the key difference is that people who pay for it in the for-profit sector get that product in return. People who pay for it in the nonprofit sector, they don't get it in return. What they get is intangible. So that's really the key difference, I think.
Great answer. Thank you. A good question here from Roberta Phillips, an educator. She says, were you able to get food from restaurant suppliers since the restaurants were not open? Did you get any benefit from food they didn't want to have to throw out?
We did, but as many of you know, a lot of restaurants closed pretty early in the pandemic, right? And so they stopped receiving food, and that food had to be redirected. So then ultimately what happened was the government was then able to collaborate with the folks who would have been sending the food to the restaurants to then purchase that food and redirect it to food banks. So that's one of the things that the government did well during the pandemic. They reclaimed that food that would have gone to restaurants, and they redirected it to feeding organizations like our food bank and the other food banks across the country. So we received donations from restaurants throughout the year, but during the pandemic, we didn't see an increase per se directly from restaurants that were contributing, but we received that food just the same.
Okay, great. By the way, for the teachers and students who are putting questions in the chat, please put them in the Q&A box, because that's where I'm looking at the questions. It's hard to look in both places. So put your question in the chat. I'll do our best to get to it. We have about 7-8 more minutes with Dr. Jones Nichols. This is a great conversation. Another really good question here, because again, we want to make this practical for people. Josh Park. Josh, if you could go in the chat, tell us where you attend school, assuming you're a student, could be a teacher, but let's tell us where you are. He says, what if you'd like to volunteer at a food bank? What are different volunteer opportunities during the pandemic is more to the point. Like, what if you want to help out, what can you do right now?
So the same volunteer opportunities exist now that existed prior to the pandemic. Individuals can still come to a food bank and help us sort food that we purchase in bulk because we get it at a reduced price. Individuals can, they can help us sort food that's been donated.
Okay.
They can help us package food that we have purchased at wholesale prices. They can also help us distribute food in the community. So those are some of the key ways that individuals can support food banks across the country. And even though some food banks that are smaller like ours are no longer able to receive the same number of volunteers on any given day, we still depend on volunteers. And for our organization, we've traditionally depended on more than 6,000 volunteers every year who have contributed more than 40,000 hours of service.
Wow. You know, I'm going to do it again for the students. What number did she just say? How many volunteers come through? Was that like in a year, that number?
Yes.
How many volunteers did she just say? Not 12. That was the last question. Okay. 6,000. I want to continue to stress to you how powerful numbers are. when we're talking about ourselves, when we're talking to others, numbers are critical. So think about the numbers that you have in your own life of things you've achieved, of hours you've worked at places, money you've raised, food you've collected. Think about the number. 6,000 is a big number, and that's much more important than if she had said, we have lots of volunteers that come through. If she said lots, would you have thought 6,000? Would anybody have thought that number if she said a lot of volunteers? No way. You would have thought maybe 300, 500. That's a huge number. So we have to own our numbers and make sure that we're sharing them. And I want you to listen and remember when you hear them so you think about it for yourself. Okay, we've had this question a few times, so I'm going to get it out there. This one is from, oh, I just lost it because it scrolled down. Several students asked this question. What kinds of food do you often have to throw out? Like what needs to go, what doesn't last, or just how does that work? What food stays and what can last, and what's that look like?
Over the past 10 years in particular, we've been working to increase the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables that we distribute. And oftentimes, because the produce is donated, it's already at the end of its shelf life or close to the end of its shelf life. So if we're not able to get that food out quickly, then sometimes it will end up getting thrown away. And we're fortunate to have almost 200 feeding partners where we can send that food. But during the pandemic, again, because people weren't able to do what they had always done, a lot of those feeding partners closed. And so we didn't have as many places to send that fresh produce. So, that's something that, might get thrown away if we aren't able to get it out quickly, because literally when it comes into our food bank, oftentimes we just have about 2 to 5 days to turn the inventory and get it out. So, that's probably the main thing. We still receive a lot of shelf-stable food, so typically that food can remain on hand for up to 6 months, but we try to turn our overall inventory at least once every month. So,
Wow.
so lots coming in and,
Wow.
and going out to help others in need.
A lot of turnover. I'm neglecting my worksheet here. If we look at question number 2, she's given out lots of facts. I hope you're remembering some facts, some numbers about what you learned about her job, some of those numbers we're talking about. Okay. We've talked about question number 3. Why is it important to show people you care about what they do? Taking an interest in them, they'll respect us more because we respect them. Life is a two-way street. Now, question number 4, we're going to address this. Maybe it'll be our last question, maybe our next to last question for Dr. Jones Nichols. A question from Darian McDaniels. Darian, where do you attend school? Let us know in the chat. Hopefully you're still with us. He said, what skills do I need to get the job, or more better stated, to work in nonprofits? What type of skills, like if I'm in high school, college right now, and I want to go into this career field, what are some things I should be learning, classes I should be taking? How should I be preparing myself for this career path?
One of the first things I'll say is a no-brainer. If you want to go into the nonprofit helping profession, you should have a heart for serving others. And that's not something you can learn in a classroom. It isn't quite something that you develop over time, but it absolutely needs to be the foundation upon which everything else is built. I think you also have to have great critical thinking skills that can be applied to various forms of analysis, right? Some people come in for an interview and they say, I just want to feed the hungry. And that's not enough, You have to be able to, look at the statistics across a service area, whether it's food insecurity statistics or the meal gap statistics or the poverty rates, and then use that information to make good decisions about where we need to focus our services and which interventions need to be offered. So critical thinking skills, definitely need to develop analytical skills. I think if you're interested in being a nonprofit executive, you have to have really great communication skills. So
Ooh,
taking
how about that?
classes in public speaking would be fantastic because you will talk to the public all the time. And sometimes you'll do that in the traditional media, other times you'll do it in one-on-one meetings. Nowadays, you're doing it in Zoom or via Zoom, and that requires, a different skill set. I think in addition to that, you have to develop an understanding about effective interventions. And for me, I'm a social worker by training, and I'm not just a bleeding heart. As a social worker, I have a master's degree in social work. I have a PhD in social work. And so literally that means I understand the theory behind developing social work interventions, and I also understand the practical implications. And so if you want to go into the helping profession, you should take specific classes that will allow you to become a subject matter expert in the work you will be doing. Becoming a part of the nonprofit helping profession or sector is not just about passion. Anyone can have passion. That's the first thing you need, but you need all of these other things as well. So those are just some of the things
Wow.
that I think you need in order to be effective.
Boy, I think she gave us a lot to think about for question number 4. Did she not? A lot of different ideas about how to prepare ourselves. Darian is from Patriot High School in Northern Virginia. Thank you, Darian. Dr. Jones Nichols, I know she has to hop out to another speaking engagement or meeting, so we're going to let her go in just a moment. We'll wrap up separately. But as a last question to you, I just want you to say it to the students. If a student came in and met with you, or a job applicant came in and knew what the food bank has been up to lately, had been on the website, had studied the organization, how does that hit you? How do you feel about somebody when they've already done that homework, they've shown they've prepared?
I think you touched on it already in terms of saying it shows that that individual is truly interested in the position for which they have expressed a desire to have. It also shows that they're very serious about our organization, right? They're not just interested in this case, feeding hungry people. They want to know about what we're doing to eliminate hunger and achieve our vision for a hunger-free community. So I believe it shows that they're interested, they're serious, and that they're also very deliberate or intentional about how they approach various tasks, whether it's successfully completing an interview or successfully developing an intervention that's going to have a measurable impact in the lives of people who are being served. So those are some of the things that
Wonderful.
I would take away from someone who comes in very prepared.
That's great. That's what I wanted the students to hear. The preparation makes a big difference. We'll let you go. I want to everybody say thank you in the chat. Raise your hand, or give a virtual a clap to Dr. Jones Nichols for being here. She was wonderful. We learned so much. Everyone else who's here, don't leave yet. You don't leave. She's allowed to go. You have to stay. We have a few more things I want to show you. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. All right. So we have a few more minutes here, so stick around. Okay, I want to show you a couple other things. So I thought it was a great conversation, wasn't it? Raise your hand if you learned a lot about working in a food bank, working what she does every day, learn some really good numbers, some details. That was a great conversation. All right, now let's say the conversation's over and we want to write a thank you. Okay, a thank you email, or what's the other option? We have 2 options here. We could write a thank you email, or what else could we write? What's the other way we could say thank you to somebody? Someone put it in the chat. What's the other way to say thanks? A note. Sylvie says it. A handwritten note. Raise your hand, students, if you've written a handwritten thank you note before. Who's done one of those before? A lot of hands. Great. Let's look at an example of a handwritten thank you note. We didn't talk about it in our last webinar session. Let's do handwritten thank you notes today, not email thank yous. Handwritten notes go a long way for people. You know why? Because nobody gets them anymore. Nobody sends them anymore. Everyone says, oh, that's old school. But you know what? Raise your hand if you think the old school stuff still matters. If you think the old school stuff is where you get remembered. That's right. So let me show you an example from one of our ebooks in our program. Let me share my screen. Okay. Get my chat open again. One moment. Okay. Ryan, we can work on your handwriting, okay? Don't worry about it. Practice makes perfect, okay? So can we all see my screen okay? We can see this handwritten note example? Someone say yes? I always want to make sure that okay, thank you. Now let's look at this handwritten note. This is obviously kind of like printed on the page, but let me just show you what's going on. Where do we put the month and the day? Let's say you're looking at a blank inside of a note. Where does the month and the day go? Someone tell me. Right-hand corner. We want the person to know when we wrote it, because let's say we wrote her a thank you note today and she participated today. If we send that note today and date it November 5th, what does that mean? If we wrote her the note the day we saw her, that means we went right from the conversation and we wrote that note. Doesn't that look professional? Don't you think so? Absolutely. Now, let's look at our message. And let me show you what we want to do in the message. Thank you again for meeting with me. I took a lot from our conversation, especially, and then we give an example of something they shared with us. Your insight into the engineering business. Whatever went on, whatever you learned, whatever stood out to you, we put it right here so that we are making sure that our message doesn't just say, thanks so much, it was great to hear from you. Because do we like getting a message that feels like it was a cookie cutter message that everybody would have gotten? Or we want it to feel special? Don't we want it to feel special, like it was written just to us? That's a message that we save forever. So we want to make sure the thank you note has something special. Okay? And then what happens is the person gets it and says, wow, what an impressive young man or young woman. And they save that note. Raise your hand if you've gotten a handwritten note before and you saved it and you still have it. I see a lot of hands going up. But why did you save it? Someone tell me, a student tell me. Sarah says, I have it in my room. Why did you save it, Sarah? Or anybody? Why do you save notes? It's just a piece of paper. Because it made me feel special. That's exactly right. Now, don't you want to make the employer feel special when you're applying for a job? Don't you want to make that college admissions person feel special when they're thinking about you to bring you to campus? Isn't that a good place to be when someone's thinking about you and whether they should pick you or not? That's why when we meet a career professional, it's much, much more than just listening to them talk for 20 minutes and then we say, okay, I listened to a career professional, on with my day. Instead, we are going to learn from that person. We're going to learn how to ask follow-up questions. We're going to send thank you notes, because that is how you show that you are a confident young adult that's ready for the next big opportunity. That's why I wanted to make sure we always finish out these discussions talking about thank you messages. So when the time comes to write your own, you remember to be detail specific. And when you're using a thank you note, you know how it should look. Let me mention one other thing before we hop out of this screen. What color of pen should we use in a thank you note? You have two choices in my book, two different colors that you have to choose from. That's right. Very good. Black or blue. No purple, no pink, no orange, no red. Don't do it. Blue or black, and you'll never go wrong. That's right. Keep it professional, Fanny says. Excellent. All right. Now, for the teachers who, a question from Sarah, how do we know if we have the correct criteria for the thank you note? If by criteria, do you mean their address? You can always go to their business website, find their address. Or if you're confused, there's no shame in calling the business and asking the receptionist to say, can you please give me your address? And they'll give you their address. Okay. How many students know how to address a letter with a stamp? Show of hands. Who knows how to address a letter? And it's okay if you don't know. But this is a skill to learn while you're in school. So you know how to address a letter and have it sent to the right location. All right, now to wrap up here, for the educators who missed it at the beginning, let me just hop back and share. We can see my PowerPoint slide, correct? PowerPoint slide is up? Okay, so for those who missed it, we put together a pack of writing and speaking guides for learning how to engage with employers like we did today. It's a Google folder of free resources with all these topics here. Learning how to ask for the conversation, hold the conversation, write thank you after. We also have a collection of email etiquette lessons in a Google folder. We'd love to give that to you as well. We know that email writing has never mattered more than right now. Help our students to communicate professionally. If you would like these resources, as an educator here, as we always do, type interested in the chat with your email address. The goal here, if you're new to our community, is a 5-minute call, help you understand what we provide, understand better your program, and put it in context for you. So interested and your email address if you missed it at the beginning. And we'll follow up in the next few days. Love to talk to you. It's impossible to talk to everybody right now, and I'd much prefer to have real conversation than you just hearing a one-sided story in these sessions. Also, future planning for the teachers here. Our next webinar, we're going to explore the world of engineering. Thursday, November 19th at 12:30 Eastern. We're going back to our normal time, our regularly scheduled time, as they say on TV. And we're going to talk to Phil Poland, who's a lead engineer for the city of Virginia Beach, city of 500,000 people. Major challenges including sea level rise. They're having to plan, they believe that by the year 2100, the ocean will rise 4.5 feet. And when that happens, it's going to bring water way inland and create all kinds of problems, structural problems, quality of life problems. So we're going to talk about how his team is combating climate change, sea level rise. Really interesting conversation coming up on the 19th. In addition, everybody today is getting their certificate for being here live. And also, if you missed it, if you're on Twitter, we are as well at Rubin Education. Give us a follow us on Twitter. Stay connected that way for all of our resources, updates, this, that, and the other. Okay, with that, I will turn off the screen. Any last questions here, or we'll wrap just a little before 2:15 Eastern time. I thought today was great. All the students did a great job participating. I hope we learned a lot today about how we listen. Who learned a lesson today about listening skills, active listening skills? It's not discussed enough, but being a good listener is the key to career success. Because if you listen well, you ask good questions, and you make people trust you more. If you listen well, you hear about ways you yourself can improve. Listening is the key to opportunity. And I want us to continue to use our listening skills in these sessions so that we are taking the absolute maximum from these professionals who take time out of their busy day for us. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. I can't wait to see you again in 2 weeks to talk about engineering. And thank you to the teachers who've requested information. Be in touch with you on that shortly. Thank you, everyone. I hope you stay safe wherever you are, and that we see you in a couple of weeks.